Richard Askinase, 8 Irwin Road. The Planning Commission supports this article. We've been working with the Housing Partnership since it was set up. We support this, and we'll be seeing future things like this in the coming town meetings. Thank you.
Okay, the Town Council has just advised me that if we want to pass this by a majority vote, we first have to accept the provision of the Mass General Laws by a majority vote. And Mr. Martyr, do I understand you correctly? You believe that it would be proper within the four corners of the article for us to accept the provisions of the general law? It seems to me that we would have to have a separate article, wouldn't we? Therefore, we'd have to go with a 2/3 vote. Mr. Sylvia. Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Wood.
Mr. Wood.
Say that it would be limited to residents of the town, and I just wanted to know if that was actually true.
Mr. Wood, would you answer Mr. Sylvia's question?
That's correct. Under the comprehensive system, 70% of the units can be delegated to local residents, and then the formula breaks down from there. So many go to minorities, and so many go to out-of-town residents. This being our initial project, and knowing that 70% of the units can be delegated to local residents, that we feel comfortable that we can allow North Reading residents to be the recipients of this particular project.
Mr. Cerrone.
Board of Selectmen recommends.
Any further discussion? Hearing none. As stated a moment ago, after everything was said and done, we still require a 2/3 vote on this particular motion. And the motion is to transfer control of the parcel of land containing 10,400 square feet located at Algonquin Road, shown on Assessor's Map as Parcel 23 of Map 8, to the Housing Partnership as specified in Article 8. On the motion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed? All those in favor, please say aye once again. Aye. Those opposed? Unanimous. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Article 19. Can't remember your name. Would you please state Article 19? Please state your name and address, sir.
Name's Marty Weiss, 26 Cleek Court.
Mr. Weiss.
I move that the town vote to adopt Chapter 16, General Wetlands Protection Bylaw as specified in Article 19 as printed in the warrant.
You've heard the motion. Does the Finance Committee have a recommendation? Mrs. Holsing.
The Finance Committee recommends.
On the motion, Mr. Weiss.
Mr. Moderator, town meeting members, like many others have already said, North Reading is a wonderful community in which to live. And one of the reasons it is because of its natural resources. However, they must be preserved or the town will not continue to prosper and grow. Currently, there are no North Reading bylaws that protect our wetlands and related water resources. I would like to take the next 5 minutes to explain some of the highlights of this bylaw and why its passage is important. This article would establish an independent local wetlands protection bylaw for the town of North Reading. The bylaw would authorize the Conservation Commission to adopt its own rules and regulations and exercise its responsibility to enforce them. Under existing laws, the Conservation Commission administers the state's Wetlands Protection Act, Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, for the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, which has the ultimate responsibility for its enforcement. In other words, North Reading wetlands are currently protected by state laws and state regulations, which can only be enforced in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Protection. If the DEP believes that local Conservation Commission decisions are not stringent enough or too stringent, then DEP can overrule them. Passage of this article will permit more local control over wetland activities in the town of North Reading. This bylaw will not change the state statutes. The state law administered by DEP is considered a minimum, not a maximum. For example, the state law addresses 7 specific wetland values. They include public or private water supply, groundwater, flood control, storm damage prevention, water pollution control, fisheries and shellfish, and wildlife habitat. This bylaw adds 4 more wetland values which we believe are important to North Reading's water resources. They are erosion and sedimentation control, recreation, aesthetics, and agriculture and aquaculture. The controlling of these additional activities will be more consistent with North Reading wetland conditions and concerns for wetlands protection, not to restrict development. During the past 10 years, 39 communities have amended their general bylaws to include their own general wetlands protection bylaw. While not all these bylaws are identical, most of them follow the model bylaw prepared by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. Some merely track the state statute and adopt by reference the DEP regulations. However, the majority add other wetland values deserving local protection, tighten permit procedures, confer authority for conservation commissions to adopt its own regulations, and clarify the power to disapprove work in wetlands and floodplains. This article follows the model and proposes a similar comprehensive bylaw. Adoption of this bylaw will place greater responsibility on the Conservation Commission. The additional responsibilities include the following. 1, the bylaw supplements the state act rather than supplanting it. Therefore, the Conservation Commission will be administering both procedures together. 2, the Conservation Commission must carefully draft and promulgate rules and regulations. For the most part, the state regulations, which are codified in 310 CMR 10.00, will be incorporated, and they will be streamlined to expedite the permit process. This is no small job. The procedures include holding public hearings, among many other types of meetings. 3, decisions under the bylaw must be supported by a detailed written record that discloses specific facts and stated commission policy. This also places an additional burden on the commission. While the Conservation Commission decisions under the existing state law can be appealed to DEP, decisions under a local bylaw are appealable to the Superior Court. When DEP reviews an appeal under current law, they start all over again. They review the original application and plans and then issue their own order of conditions called the superseding order. Under this local bylaw, the Superior Court only reviews a certified copy of the administrative record to determine if an error of law was committed. The regulations to be promulgated under this bylaw will include filing fees, which must be approved by the Board of Selectmen. The fee will cover the town's costs to review and process applications. Currently, these costs are being paid by the town of North Reading rather than the applicants. It is estimated that these costs will approach $10,000 annually. Under regulations of this bylaw, this amount of money would be paid by those filing applications, and the fees would go into a revolving account and be subject to appropriation at the town meeting. With respect to the amount of the fees, after this article is adopted, the Conservation Commission will be reviewing the fee schedules of those communities with bylaws. We have already looked at some of the fee schedules. For example, in the town of Lincoln, The filing fee that involves a house addition is $25. For a new single house, it is $250. And for a multiple dwelling, it is $500 plus $100 per unit. Some towns have schedules based on the square feet of area within the buffer zone and the area outside the buffer zone. When the regulations are being promulgated, we will provide in detail the basis of our fee recommendations. The last issue I wish to address is enforcement. Currently, the Conservation Commission can issue citations for violations of the state regulations. However, we cannot impose fines. We must rely on the DEP to take action on any violations where violators will not come into compliance or take the violator to court. Under the bylaw, enforcement action can be taken by town officials for either criminal or non-criminal violations. We believe this bylaw is urgently needed to provide much more local control over the natural resources critical to the town of North Reading. Vote affirmative on this article. North Reading's wetlands must be protected by its own bylaws. Thank you.
Is there any discussion? Mr. Sylvia.
Al Sylvia, 20 Francis Street. Mr. Maurer, I would like to learn from Mr. Weiss, would this proposed bylaw have any effect on the two new houses, for example, that were constructed recently on the south side of Winter Street, heading from Main Street into town? Now, the definition, I suppose, of a wetland is what's critical. But if that's not wetland, I don't know what is. And if currently both the state regulations and present town regulations wouldn't prevent such intrusion upon wetland, I would like to hear your comments, please.
Mr. Weiss, would you care to answer Mr. Sylvia's question?
I believe those two houses went before the Conservation Commission, and they were issued permits because the proposal complied with the existing state laws and regulations.
And if I may, Mr. Moderator, carry this further, the state law overrides anything we might pass here in North Reading. Is that true?
Mr. Weiss, yes, please go ahead.
No, it won't.
Oh, you mean North Reading's bylaws would supersede the state laws?
They would be pursued together.
Pursued together.
The state law would be pursued by its procedure, and North Reading's law would be pursued by its procedure.
And who would ultimately win, or prevail, I should say?
Well, usually the bylaw that has a more restrictive use would be the one that would prevail.
I mean, in my opinion, if you don't mind, those two houses are sitting in water. And I realize that developers do have certain rights to property that they own. Certainly one of the rights is to build houses. But to me, every time I go by there, now there is another house prior to those that was there before such laws were adopted. But to me, it seems like a gross injustice and to just put those houses there. Their back doors are wetlands. And if we can't correct that, I don't see any purpose of proposing anything.
Mr. Smith, please state your name and address, sir.
Mr. Moderator, William Smith, 230 Elm Street. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the exact same bylaw that was defeated at this town meeting last year. It's back again, and it'll keep coming back until it's passed. As most of you know, I spoke very strongly against this bylaw last year at October's town meeting, and I will again this evening. This is the most restrictive, expensive, regulatory piece of legislation that's ever come before this town meeting since I've been coming here. It is the type of legislation